The Eskom Board has still not seen the forensic report that was commissioned by former CEO Andre de Ruyter following an investigation into corruption at the power utility. This was a part of what was revealed at the board's latest appearance before SCOPA. The committee recalled the Eskom Board to get more information before deliberating on the fraud and corruption allegations made by de Ruyter. Let's unpack these latest developments with SCOPA Chairperson Mkhuleko Hlengwa joins us via our video link this morning. Chair, it's great to see you. Thanks very much indeed for coming on. Fair to say that the oversight part where Parliament has been lacking, critics will say, insofar as Eskom is concerned, SCOPA is trying to sort of make up that time.
Well, good morning, Michelle, and to the viewers. Thank you very much for having me this morning. Well, I'm sure Parliament is not immune to criticism, and I think where it's necessary, it must be advanced. We have been grappling with the Eskom matters the best we can, and I'm certain that we are making headway in trying to get to the bottom of quite a number of issues at Eskom. And we will report accordingly in terms of our findings. We've met a number of stakeholders on this latest debacle, which arises out of the interview done by the former CEO and the allegations he makes thereof. The second point is that obviously you are saddled with a new board, which they themselves are trying to find their feet in an environment comprised of individuals and systems who have been party to the problems at Eskom. So in essence, Eskom is in crisis. Eskom is a crime scene, and it requires all of us to put shoulder to the wheel in ensuring that we perform our responsibilities. We are placing particular emphasis on the board to make sure that they hit the ground running and give them the necessary support. The urgency must not be lost on them. The second point is that the law enforcement agencies, they themselves need to step up. We're not finding a sense that they're moving with the necessary pace once there are interventions. And the third and final point is that there has to be a change of culture insofar as how Eskom is run and managed, a paradigm shift at head office to the direction of the sites. So the issue is you've got processes and protocols at head office, but they're not translating into implementable action at the various power stations where, for lack of a better phrase, power stations are independent. They do their own processes and so on. So there's a lack of controls at that level. And so we are saying head office needs a boots on the ground style of leadership management to make sure that things turn around for the greater good of Eskom. Yes, there are issues at head office which are very, very important, amongst others the debt relief of 254 billion rands that passed yesterday will be a head office competence. But that debt and financial management arises out largely of transactions that take place in the various sites. Yeah. So I think at a particular level, we are all saying there's a need of change of course. Let me finally say the issue of the report, the information gathering and intelligence report, the SIU has already got that report and they're processing it, but we are saying that board must as well have it. The only complication I think which arises is that report may be citing people who are currently at Eskom, who may then be players and referees in its implementation. So I think the SIU and the board need to interact to say how, the best possible way of managing and processing that report for it to yield maximum results. But the principle is that they must get it. There's no doubt about that. If they are able to do the work.
Yeah, I want to get to the issue of the board's inaction, according to MPs, insofar as that intelligence report is concerned. But, you know, you talk about Eskom being a crime scene. Those are your words, and I think backed up by the performance of the power utility over many, many decades. And yet board members still continue to sing the song of Eskom having good policies and good systems in place.
No, they're not wrong about that. The systems that are on paper are there. It's implementation that is a problem, a failure to adhere to due process. You see, when an individual becomes a system, then they create a dependency on them for the institution. For an example, you've got an independent report investigation commissioned not by Eskom or as a board on Eskom matters, but commissioned by the former CEO. You have got the COO who had reached retirement age, but is being brought back as a contractor for 2 years because, well, insofar as the projects that remain, largely Kusile and the Kubek issues, he became the system. So his failings notwithstanding and his shortcomings notwithstanding, you continue to depend on them. That is fundamentally the issue at Eskom. So yes, I make the point to the board that if and only if you do one, what's on paper, to follow through on your plans, then things should change. So what they need to do is to root out the people, the persons who are the agents of corruption. That's why we're placing a heavy emphasis on the law enforcement agencies, because they are the ones who must investigate and prosecute to push back on the frontiers of corruption. So if the law enforcement agencies are not an enabler, those processes are just good as they are on paper. So the board is not wrong, but where they have to realize the lacuna is they are dealing with people. Systems are reliant on the performance, the skills, knowledge, and expertise of those you employ. So they need to make sure that the right skill set, the right integrity exists, and create a conducive and enabling environment for the employees to be able to do their jobs. Because another major factor at Eskom is the factionalism of leadership, a cabal which is intimidating us. So you've got employees whom are not finding the environment healthy on one hand. Then there's the criminal element of some of those employees.
Yeah. So create an environment for employees to be able to do their jobs. And wow, there's a lot of those employees. I mean, the staff complement we heard at SCOPA yesterday having increased by almost double over the past 15 years, and specifically during the state capture years.
Yeah, true. And then they go on to say that there's vacancies of 2,500. So there has to be a rationalization process at Eskom, and we've directed that they need to come back and brief us in great detail on the 7% wage increases which they've announced, so that there's greater clarity insofar as human resource management. And so that is one issue we are flagging, which we don't want to deal with in passing. The whole institutional establishment, a skills audit is required. But on top of that, it runs parallel with the contract management insofar as outsourcing of responsibilities is concerned. So it's not just the staff establishment, but also the people being brought in through contracts. So we are looking at how we can best rationalize that, but we need a greater, briefing of that, and I wouldn't want to speculate. Suffice it to say that the staff establishment in its total certainly isn't yielding the results that we require insofar as Eskom expectations are concerned.
Shall we talk a bit more about the intelligence report that, as you say, was not commissioned by the board, but by the now former CEO Andre de Ruyter? The board's response to that intelligence report, according to the MPs at SCOPA yesterday, was to say that Andre de Ruyter had brought Eskom into disrepute. But the question remains, what was done about the scathing information that was contained in that report? What did the board have to say about that?
Well, they indicated that they were instituting an independent investigation, which is being done by ENS. Where I think the board failed is in not interrogating and having a frank discussion about the allegations with Mr. de Ruyter when he made them. Yes, the board is well within its rights to effect consequence management, which is of the view that the institution has been brought into disrepute. At the same time, the greater good must take priority, and that greater good is getting to the bottom of the problems. And Mr. de Ruyter, who was in a position of authority because he was still the CEO and had some 5-6 weeks to go in office, should have been interacted with and investigated. The flip side of that coin Mr. de Ruyter himself had got obligations, or rather had, whilst he was in office, of PRECA and the PFMA to report these matters. And according to the Hawks, he only formally reported these issues on the day before he appeared before SCOPA in April. So there's fiduciary responsibilities which he was found wanting on, but at the same time, I think the board missed an opportunity at that moment and sought to deal with Mr. de Ruyter's exit as opposed to engage the matters. I think the board may have come in good faith insofar as the people that were there in interacting with them, in inducting with them because they were new. But their realization is fast dawning on them that they are interacting in large part with the problem, and that is the staff and executive establishment at Eskom. And so they have to change tact and assert their authority far more greatly than on the basis of faith.
So what else for SCOPA insofar as its oversight and Eskom, Chair? You've been conducting oversight visits at the Power Utilities Megawatt Park headquarters. You've been in discussions with the board. You've been probing these explosive allegations made by the former Eskom CEO. What next, and how do you see this process ending in a way that is successful is perhaps the wrong word, but successful for SCOPA?
Well, I think successful has to be the right word because we need to have successful outcomes. We can't embark on an oversight that doesn't yield results. But this oversight must be viewed in the context that in large part here we are looking at the issues that have been raised by Mr. de Ruyter, and we need to recommend correctly so that the institution can find help, and that help must also come from Parliament to ensure that we know where interventions are required, they take place. Amongst others, there's the issue of the municipal debt to Eskom of 60 billion rands. That requires parliamentary intervention. On the other hand, we are dealing with a situation where the law enforcement agencies themselves must move in, and we need to give greater support to that. It's encouraging, of course, that there is now a JOC that has been set up at Eskom by the SAPS at their head office to work on Eskom-related matters. So there is progress on the other hand. The changes that have been done to Tutuga so far are yielding results because that power station, in our view, is the microcosm of all the Eskom problems in Mpumalanga specifically and Eskom generally. So you had them at an EAF of 15 to 17%. There's been interventions and changes in terms of leadership and so on that have been done. They are standing at 27%, and then hopefully that will move forward. So what is clear is that we need to recommend correctly in order for Eskom to be able to succeed. At the same time, we will be engaging with the SIU to say how do they support the board in ensuring that upon receipt of the forensic investigation, the intelligence report rather, they're able to process it. So whilst Parliament will be going on recess now, we will be applying for special meetings in this duration so that we can report in earnest to Parliament to bring about these matters to a logical and successful conclusion.
SCOPA Chairperson Mkhuleko Hlengwa, let me thank you for your time this morning.